Hey everybody, my name's Greg. I'm from ChainSafe. A little bit about me, I'm one of the co-founders of CPO, also previously a core developer for Ethereum. Kind of transitioned from engineering into product last year or two. And today I'm going to talk about how we can make gaming, I wasn't actually going to say it, but how can we make gaming a little bit more palatable for players, especially when we talk about Web3 concepts. So if you were here last year in New York, you would have. My theme last year was let's build communities, not just games, and that's kind of in the idea of how can we future-proof some of our gaming by introducing Web3 concepts into them, and focusing on the player base as the driver for how you can get that game. That's looking at your community to help build IP and work on it, and I don't think I jumped the gun there, but I think this year I started to realize as games were kind of coming into the space, I started to say, you know what, I think we're still having a problem where we're building games and calling them Web3 games and not really focusing on the fact that we actually have to just build a game that people want to play first. And so today I want to focus on the fun side, and by specifically when I say that, it's, we have to kind of look at what does make a game fun, which is there's so many factors, and I think by focusing on that, I'm not here to tell you how to make a game fun. I'm not a game design expert. I don't work on game loops day to day. I work on the infrastructure side, especially in the Web3 infrastructure side for games. And so what I can tell you is some people might put Pikachu, cute things, and cute JPEGs to make their games seem more fun or palatable. But there's a lot of things in factor, right? Challenge to reward ratio, that's that dopamine kick you always hear about. What are the game loops, the goals of the game, how does your UX play out? These are all different factors that can play into it. But I think the most important thing we can talk about in a Web3 context is actually, what doesn't, that slide, I thought I deleted it. If you're interested, this is the actual player churn from a day perspective. So down at the bottom is day 0 of install for mobile games. At the top, and that's the player count, that would be 1.6 million at the very top. So these are for virality. It dies out really, really, really fast. So it's really important to get that first initial day perfect. And if you've used a dApp in Web3, that first initial day is pretty brutal, especially with all the onboarding requirements. But let's focus on what takes fun away from the game, because I think that's more important for us to understand, and will paint a better picture, especially when developers are building Web3 games, where they need to focus on. And obviously, as I was saying, when your first experience you get to a dApp, you probably have a screen like this, which sucks. You also probably eventually might run into this, which is insufficient gas, because you don't have gas on some weird sidechain that they're working on. You also might need to go buy an NFT because it's gated. There might be some weird play-to-earn economics that make the game less enjoyable and less palatable. The entire title, and this is a Reddit post, I don't know if you can see it well, but it's somebody complaining about blockchain games, and it's the fact that you've marketed your game as a blockchain game versus just a fun game. And endless wallet pop-ups. If we want to talk about game loops and ensuring that there's an enjoyable experience, having MetaMask pop up every 30 seconds to 2 minutes is a very unenjoyable experience, especially if you're on Wallet Connect and you have to do this whole thing, and then you're playing on your desktop, going to your phone, and it's just we're not making fun games. This is there's a running list. I had probably 10 more and cut them all out, but I think you get the idea. And especially if you go to Reddit, I think this previous point here is really prevalent in the community. And if you are in the gaming space, you'll know that a lot of traditional gamers, the minute you use those words, NFT, gaming, blockchain, Web3, you get quite a negative backlash. And so maybe let's focus on not introducing all these concepts all the time. But the biggest thing is mobile is 10x harder. These are all desktop problems. Mobile, we haven't even figured out how to get the proper, we haven't seen much happen there, especially with authentication. That just hasn't happened yet. We have really poor ways of having wallet signing and automation kind of happening there, because depending on how on-chain your game is, that might be a frequent interaction with a wallet, which means it's a pop-out from one screen to the next. Deep embeds just aren't really there. We also have gating on the App Store level, which people seem to be really scared about, although people are used to getting a 30% clip. The problem is there's the ambiguity of payments. How does that actually happen? How do on-ramps happen and whatnot? So with that being said, I think like one of the biggest themes, and the theme I want to hit on today, is really engaged. It's how do we keep our users engaged in our games so that we can continue to offer that like seamless experience you're used to when you're playing your traditional games, and introducing some concepts from Web3 that are there to enhance, whether it's a player experience or like the future proofing that I kind of talked about last year, is we want to make sure that they actually enjoy their time and their like continued hook. It's no secret that within the gaming space, it's kind of like a data feed. It's kind of like a social media feed. We want to keep that user there. We don't want them to break the cycle. We want them to continue to have that like nice little dopamine release. Sounds awful, but it's the reality. Like, we want to make sure they're having fun and they're engaged while playing our games. And everything I showed you before probably is not going to do that, and you're going to churn really fast. Quickly about ChainSafe, because it's like, why am I here? Who is this guy? I told you a little bit about me, but at ChainSafe, we're a protocol and R&D shop. We specialized in building actual client implementations. That would be like the consensus clients in Ethereum, Lodestar. We do the same thing in Polkadot called Gossamer, and the same thing in Filecoin called Forest. We also do a bunch of low-level SDK work, such as we're the maintainers of Web3.js the last like 3-4 years. I also did that after working on Lodestar. And outside of that, we have some interoperability solutions called Sigma. And also what's most important here is Web3.Unity, which kind of is modeled after Web3.js. Web3.Unity follows the paradigm that you shouldn't have to rely on an API-based service to broker your connections. So when you download the SDK, you're not beholden to us falling over the next day. At ChainSafe, that's one of our fundamentals. We really believe in following the principles of Web3 and the philosophies of open source code, decentralization, and ensuring that we are not creating your own blockers. So there is no really walled garden with us. You can use all of our stuff independently. We do have paid services and stuff like that on top, but that's completely optional. Every single feature we add into Web3 Unity is independent and can be used independently of us as long as those services continue to exist. And I'll get into some of them in a little bit. And that's a little bit about ChainSafe. So, if we're going to make fun games, how many of you here remember addicting games, Miniclip? Yeah. Or your Nokia cell phone with Snake. Snake was fun. Really fun, but it was also just a dumb game, but it worked because it was really easy. Similarly, Interactive Buddy on Addicting Games, I think, was one of their top things. You just threw inanimate objects at this little caricature, and again, it's fun, it's engaging. People stuck around on these sites at these Flash game sites because they were just had a very simple premise. The game loop was simple, but people enjoyed their time while they were doing it. I think it's super important to remember that, when we add Web3 into things, we have to maintain the simplicity of all this. This is also a really good example of being engaged. The famous LAN party, right? It's just I think they're playing CS:GO. Yeah, they're playing 1.6. But point being is, people were engaged with the simplest of game loops, and we don't have to make it super complicated. I think one of the biggest problems, and let's touch on it now from previous ones, is was basically the authentication and the transaction flow. There are solutions today to solve all this. Companies such as Web3 Auth, Coinbase Wallets as a Service, they're offering ways for you to log in seamlessly, have your users log in seamlessly, so it looks like a generic flow. In this example, social login. They also, most of these services also offer custom logins. So if you're ChainSafe, for example, I can make the ChainSafe login flow. And it's just talking with our servers. And it's totally decentralized in the sense that what Web3 Auth does in the background is they shard a private key amongst many different sources to reconstruct it using Shamir secret key sharing. And what you end up getting is you end up getting an app scoped key. So now there's your specific game has a key that you can consider almost ephemeral, work with them, and onboard them. The next step from this is building out things like intense smart contract wallets and going kind of like that next level layer deep into the whole process of saying of onboarding a user. I also said smart contract wallet because we don't have native account abstraction. That's for another day, but keep that in mind. We can now pair the transaction flow also with gasless transactions. This has been around for a really long time. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but when you pair basically a social login with a gasless transaction login, and those keys are app scoped, what we now experience is that the user doesn't actually know there's any Web3 in this game whatsoever today. If you have achievements or rewards or checkpoints that you want to put on chain and they need to be signed by the user, the app scope key can be fully controlled by the game. It doesn't really matter because it's not going to be used by anybody else, as well as now when you want to do a gasless transaction, you can just sponsor it for them. There obviously are questions around the App Store and things like that if you do want to charge the user for that and have that as an Apple Pay or an Android Google Pay interaction. There are ways to get and work that, and so you could just sponsor them for them, or you could have them pay for it via a fiat on-ramp. Similarly, as I said before, we can start pairing this with account abstraction, well, as people call it, account abstraction. And what we end up getting is this really nice full suite situation because people can then start adding keys, in the account abstraction world, smart contract world, adding boundaries. As that user gets more advanced, we can swap out those ephemeral keys for them too. There's going to be probably a lot of work on this in the future. I know I'm working with a few teams to integrate their solutions, which will dramatically enhance basically the overall experience of how do you onboard a user from social login, where they don't know they're playing with a Web3 enabled game, to the point where they want to offboard some of those assets or those achievements they've earned and push them outwards. There's going to be a lot of great stuff, especially as we start looking into iPhones like secure enclaves and the fact that in the Apple ecosystem, they've really opened up how we can access fingerprint and Face ID based metric contextual data. And something a little really specific that we've finished, I think it went live today, is talking about RNG. And we all, if you play MMOs or gambling games or just anything really, we know RNG is a fundamental property in many games. And so, as of today, hopefully, maybe the EST time zone, Chainlink's VRFs will be fully enabled within our SDK and in Unity, which is super exciting because it really enables a lot of possibilities for our developers, as well as people really just in the gaming space to take this kind of to the next level. So we've started with some super simple examples. I have a short video with no audio. I don't know if that's right now. If it works, it might not have even got set up. Okay, I'll skip. I don't think we have it. Oh, that's it? I had an extra slide. Sorry. Anyway, the setup for it is super simple. What we've built is we've built out some loot boxes, basically as the first demo example. So as a Unity developer with prefabs, you can drag, drop, get loot boxes in there. It follows the same idea that your users shouldn't have to care about how they're authenticating. You also shouldn't care how you're using Web3. It should be really simple. So basically, you just kind of register on our dashboard to get access to that loot box. Again, you can go separate from this. The prefabs exist. You can just do it. You don't have to go through us, but we just broker all the on-chain actions for you. The simple flow kind of like this, it kind of just there's a server side, there's an on-chain side. There's a factory contract, and we're just kind of spitting out your loot boxes as you want. And yeah, does this video work? Oh, it does. Oh, cool. Maybe. I go for it. Don't worry about it. Oh, jokes. Don't worry about it. It's okay. We'll continue. Oh, now I've lost access. It's all good. Well, while we're here. Yeah, so We worked with Chainlink to kind of like build this out with the loot box. The whole, yeah, we're actually getting stuff done here. Don't worry about it. I got a couple more slides I want to rip through, and then call it a day for everybody. Thank you. Yeah, so what you would have saw in the video is that, it's really simple. You get the dashboard spun up, and then, you can just see like that we had a demo app of like a racing car game that kind of just opened up various loot boxes. But we can take this a step further, and this is what I'm really excited for in the VRF world is, there are other opportunities to use this in games and have like public verifiable, have verifiable randomness that exists. There's a game called Old School RuneScape that's been around for like 20, 15 years, something like that. And they had a funny issue where this is really recent, is they had this dungeon that as you progress through different rooms in the dungeon, you were supposed to have a higher chance at getting this one specific drop. Well, the irony of it is as you got to room 3 out of 8, every room after that actually increased. It increased its like rarity, so they kind of had the formula backwards. And it was only found after about 3 years of changes when that change was initially committed. Something like this could be solved very, very easily if people can actually verify how your like drop rates and your tables actually work. It doesn't work for every single drop, every single roll table. If you're in a game that requires very, very fast rolls to happen, obviously waiting a few blocks within the VRF system wouldn't work, but there's definitely ways you can get around it. I thought this was just like an ironic little piece. And then finally, a small little case study. It's like what building all this stuff together. We're really fortunate that one of the developers at Chainsafe on the Unity side happens to have like a top 5 game on DApp Radar called Untitled Platformer. Rain has built a pretty fun side scroller game that we're able to also battle test a lot of features. So, as we're building things, we're getting stuff in front of quite a few users. And by quite a few, I mean, there are about 100,000 unique active wallets in a given month, and over about 15K daily. That should say wallets, not users. Apologies. There's a very clear difference. And there's a mean playtime of like 1:45. It's pretty impressive. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's like Easter eggs, and it's like its own little economy and marketplace, and highly advise checking it out. And so a lot of the stuff we battle test goes through this, which makes it great. We're also working with some like larger teams such as Parallel. If you've seen the TCG, we're working on them to do a bunch of different stuff as well. And that's it. So thank you for coming. I could go on this rant, this kind of UX thing for a while. So yeah, if you have any questions after, feel free to come by. But basically, my TLDR here is like, if we're gonna make fun games, let's just remember like we need to abstract everything away. Your first goal should not be, hey, I've built a Web3 game. Your first goal should really just be, I've used some Web3 components in the background to hopefully augment the experience. And maybe let's get into a notion where we can remove the word Web3 from our games and blockchain, and just actually provide a really good experience for the end person and end user player. And a final note, we are hiring at Chainsafe, so feel free to go to chainsafe.io careers, and you can follow me and Chainsafe. Actually, if you follow this QR code, we're running a builders program, so if you are a game developer, feel free to jump over into there. We work directly with you and offer like free office hours and stuff like that, as well as some financial incentives. And if you want to stay in touch with me, I'm Greg the Greek, as in Greece, someone from Greece, not the frat life. And you can find me pretty much anywhere using that. And yeah, this is the thing I was talking about. Sorry, I got all my QR codes mixed up. But this is the Builder Program, or the loot box. Thank you so much, and I'm at time. Hope you have a good rest of SmartCon.